Right, hi y'all. Today we're going to be going over the transformer dot convention. So, in class for our circuits and systems, we've just gotten past three-phase circuits and into, of course, past watt meters, and we've just gotten to transformers. So, transformers, we know, are two inductors or two wound wires that are conductors around some sort of magnetic core. So, for us, we would want to find how much the voltage is either stepped up or stepped down across those coils and how we can implement them into our circuit. Now, this is kind of a basic background from transformers now. So let's say, for example, we have this transformer core in the shape of a donut. And let's say our primary winding, which is the winding that goes, it can be anywhere, but let's say the winding goes like this. So it first goes over the core, then it goes under, and then it goes back over, and then it comes back under. And then we have some other winding on the right side we call our secondary winding. Let's say first it goes under, just to make it a little different. Then it goes over, then it goes under, and then finally it comes back over. So we want to find some sort of current. Where is the current going to be entering through? For us, we're going to be, hello, okay. We're going to be trying to find, not really find, but we're going to say the current goes right here. We'll call this I1 of t. We need to make sure it's time varying. It cannot be DC. A lot of transformers, or pretty much all of them, if you put DC current into a transformer, it will destroy the core, making it non-usable. It just destroys it over time. So we want an alternating current. Okay, we input an alternating current through this wire so we can trace it. It goes here, then it comes back out, and it goes through like this, and then it comes back down, and it leaves like this. Okay, cool, but what does it even do? Why are we putting alternating current into this uh, wrapped around wire? Well, what happens is we have this alternating current, and it is going in a sort of curved direction. What's going to happen here is there's going to be an flux. There's going to be a magnetic flux. Because there's alternating current in a space, there's going to be a magnetic field uh, that's going to be caused by this alternating current. And because there's magnetic field, flux will be created. But what is magnetic flux and how does it even, come in? How does it play into this role of transformers? Well, this magnetic flux will cause this secondary winding to generate another magnetic field or create a voltage, meaning we're going to either have a voltage drop against it or a voltage gain. So how do we know if it's going to be voltage gain or voltage drop? Well, what we can do is we can map out the flux, the magnetic flux caused by the first current in the first wire. How do we do that? The way we do this is we use a right-hand rule. So if you get your right hand, the first current, the first alternating current on the first or the primary wire is going to be denoted or represented by your fingers. So not your thumb. Your fingers will go into the core and imagine you're holding the core. The wire is above the core, so your palm will be facing down, and you wrap your hand around the core. Which way is your thumb pointing? Well, your thumb is pointing up. So our flux will go clockwise. We'll go clockwise and into our secondary winding. Okay, well, that's good to know. Now, let's say if we have an input current for the secondary winding right here. Okay, so let's say we have an alternating current into our secondary winding that's going that way. Which way is the flux for our secondary winding going to be going? Which way is it going to be going? Okay, let's think about this. the wire is going to be underneath the core. Okay, that means our palm is going to be facing up. The current is going from right to left, so our fingers will be pointing from right to left. Which way is our thumb pointing? Imagine you're grabbing the core. So if you grab the core and you're underneath, your palm is facing up, your thumb is going to be going straight up. So your thumb is in the direction of the flux, and it's going to be going against our primary magnetic flux. We do not want this. In most cases, we don't want this. We want the fluxes to be going in the same direction, causing a greater magnetic field, and in turn, larger voltages. So what we want here is we don't want this. We can take a circle and crops this out. What we want is we want the current going through this side. And again, if you want to do the right-hand rule here, the wire is going above and the current is going from right to left. So your fingers are pointing to the left side. Your palm is facing down because the wire's above the core. Grab the core, hold on to it, and your thumb is pointing down. So now the flux is going this way. Perfect. That's exactly what we want. We want magnetic flux 1 plus magnetic flux 2, not magnetic flux 1 minus magnetic flux 2 in most cases, okay? This is what we want. Now, what if you have a different shape? Well, the shapes don't matter, matter of fact. The shapes won't matter. Let's say you have some core and it's going like this, shaped like a triangle. Okay. And it's going like this. That's one wiring. So that we can call this primary winding. You can call winding 1. Winding 2, let's say it's over here. We'll call it go underneath first. Then it goes over. Oops. And then it goes under right here. And then it goes back over. Okay, so this is winding 2. Arbitrarily, let's pick any current into this winding. Winding 1. Let's pick any current. Let's pick this current right here. This is current 1. Again, varying with time. Let's think, which way is the magnetic flux going to go? Okay, let's do this again. The current is going straight up. Okay, so your your fingers are pointing straight up. The wire is underneath the core, so your palm will be facing up. Grab the core. Now your thumb is pointing from left to right. So your flux is going from left to right. So this is flux 1. And again, flux 1 is going to be affecting the magnetic field of the secondary winding. So eventually what we're going to be calling this is going to be sort of our mutual inductance. This is very important. So the flux that the secondary winding feels from the primary winding is its mutual inductance. Okay, so now let's choose this current. Let's see, does this work? Okay. The current is going from, I guess, top to bottom. You're underneath the wire, so your palm is facing up. Grab the core. Your your fingers or your thumb is now pointing in the up direction. So now we have V2. Perfect. It's going in the same direction as V1. Magnetic fluxes add together. It's exactly what we want. This is what this is the current we need so that the fluxes add together. Okay, what about this weird thing here? Okay, let's draw windings here. Just arbitrarily. They can be anything you want. Okay, so let's choose that one, and then let's choose one. What if it goes the other way, like this? This is a little weird. This is going to be opposite, right? Will that affect anything? Well, let's try and figure out here. Let's choose this one here. Let's choose this one to be our primary winding, I1 of T. Which way is the magnetic flux going to be going? Okay, fingers going from left to right. palm is facing down, the flux is going to be going straight up. So we're going flux 1. Where should the current be going in secondary winding? So this is a primary winding, this is secondary winding. Where should the current be flowing into to create a flux going up? Think about it, do the right-hand rule here. Well, our current should be going through here, I2 of t. If you do the right-hand rule here, you'll notice your V2 is going in this direction. This will cause the fluxes to be added together. And just so you know that when transformers, this obviously isn't shown on the physical device, but they denote this in circuit diagrams as a dot. So if your dots are going into, let's say I2, let's just take I2 as an example here. If I2 is going into the dot, that means there will be a plus at the dot of the other um, winding, and then a minus at the other. Of course, you have a voltage drop, so this is V in I2. So this is the voltage, I guess, at the positive side of at this dot here. There's going to be a positive because the current of I2 is going into the dot. Whenever we get into circuit models, it'll make more sense. So let's go here. So it kind of looks like I've already done some of this, so let's get rid of it. Okay, so remember, whenever we're doing, I'm just going to get rid of this entire thing here. When we're doing circuits or transformers, they are made up of two inductors. What do we know about inductors? Well, they have an inductance. What does that mean? Well, that means they have their own inductance. So let's say L1. If we go into the phasor notation here, what is this now? J omega L1. Its impedance of L1 is equal to J omega L1. What do we multiply it to get the voltage across it? Well, we multiply the current through it. We call this I1. So that means the voltage drop VL1 is equal to what? I1 times J omega L1. This should be very familiar. This is what we're going to call its self-inductance. Okay. This should be very familiar for y'all. Self-inductance here. It's just the voltage across um, the inductor due to the current passing through it. Okay, but what if we have another inductor right across from it? And let's say this is the load resistor here, C and D, with terminal C and D, this is RL L2. And we'll even call this plus minus, and the current going through it is going this way, I2. And they are magnetically coupled. What that means is they are close enough such that the magnetic fields have a very distinct effect on the other inductor. Okay, and we can also denote this by its mutual inductance when there are arrows pointing at each other and they have this weird M in between. This is its mutual inductance. So you can think about this as the flux of, let's say, L1 affecting L2. So it's voltage. So the flux of L1 will affect the voltage drop across L2. This will make more sense when we get to it. But remember those dots earlier. Let's say we have a dot here and a dot here. Okay. Well, what do we know about the voltage drop across L1? So we'll say L1 total is equal to the VL1, its self-inductance. Okay, hopefully y'all can follow this. Plus M times di. Well, I mean, we could just call M, but if we're going to do it in the phasor, we would have to change this to j omega M times I2. This is its mutual inductance, and this is going to be in the phasor domain. I can go through the time domain in a different problem, or in a different video, but using the phasor domain for this makes it very, very, not easy, but much easier than doing it in the time domain because you have to worry about derivatives. I recommend not doing that unless you really want to get into the nitty gritty of it and understand how this works. Just do phasor domain. It makes it much easier, especially since we're dealing with inductances. Okay, so we have a mutual inductance. This here is the inductance, or voltage drop. I guess it's not the inductance, but the voltage drop that the current of I2. Let me think about how I'm gonna word this. Shit, my bad. So the voltage drop that the current of I2, that doesn't make any sense, right? I'll say it like this. The effect that I2 going through L2 has on VL1 total. So because there's a current flowing through, a time varying current, remember this, a time varying current flowing through the inductor L2, it will create a magnetic field that causes a flux, that induces a flux and induces an EMF, which is an electromotive force, across L1. So there will be an effect on L1 from the current flowing through L2. And this is denoted by the mutual inductance Jm1 times the current flowing through L2. So the total voltage that L1 will drop across L1, of course, is going to be its self-inductance plus its mutual inductance. Now, of course, it can be plus or minus. We have to make sure. We'll figure that out here. So how do we know if it's plus or minus? Well, we have to worry about the current going through L2 and the dot convention. So what they've come up with this dot convention is if I2, or the current going through the inductor that is affecting the main inductor that we have, is going into this dot, that means there will be a positive electric potential at the other dot, at the dot that we are trying to figure out, which is our primary winding L1. So there will be a positive at our main dot and a negative down at the undotted side. Hopefully that made sense. I'm going to try and say this one more time. If the current is going through the dotted side of L2, then there will be a positive sign at the dot of L1. In our case, since positive is at the top and current I1 is going through that positive dot, there will be a positive correlation between them. So then what we can say is there will be a positive mutual inductance. Now, what about L2? Well, VL2 total is first going to be equal to its self-inductance which is going to be equal to what? Positives at the top, negatives at the bottom, and the current is going from plus to minus, so it's positive, and it's going to be equal to j omega L2 times I2. And then we have our mutual inductance, plus or minus. We can just write this down, j omega m times which current? Well, now we're looking at L2. So what current is going to be affecting the voltage drop across L2? Well, it's going to be I1, because we're looking at the mutual inductance. Now, is it plus or minus? Let's go back through this dot convention again. I1 is going into the dot at L1. So that means there's going to be a positive electric potential at the dot of L2, and then a negative down here. Now, I2 is going from that dot down, so we have a plus to minus, so we have a voltage drop, which is plus. And this will be VL2. This is how we're going to be solving these transformers. Now, that's just one example. What if the dots are not there, are in different places? Okay, well, let's see. Let me move this here. What if the dots are in a different place? Let's just say they are, let's see, so this is what, VG, V source here, source resistance, AB, R of G. So let's say we have this inductor here, and it's magnetically coupled with this inductor here, C and B. And we have this load resistor. Okay. Let's say again the current I2 is going right here, and I1 is going up here. And in our case, let's say the dot is down here. Let's say this dot, and this is L1 again, and this is L2. And we have our j omega m, our mutual inductance in the phasor domain, like here. Let's say the dot of L1 is at the bottom and the dot of L2 is at the top. So now we have switched. We have them switched. And let's say plus is up here and minus is down here for the self-inductance part. So this is VL1 and this is, you know what? Let's make this negative instead and this positive. Let's just say it flips. Okay. So let's first find the, this is RL. Let's find the voltage, the total voltage drop across L1. Okay, VL1 total. Well, first we want to get the self-inductance out of the way, and then we want to add it to the VL1M, the mutual inductance. Okay, so what's our self-inductance? Well, current flows from the positive electrical potential of the voltage drop across L1 to the negative. So this is going to be positive J omega L1 times I1. Then we have a mutual inductance. So we always put plus or minus because we want to figure out after. So this is a mutual IND inductance. So we already know the values J omega M, and we want to find out which current are we using in this one. Well, it's mutual inductance, so we're using the current that is affecting the inductor, the current through the second inductor that affects the first inductor due to mutual inductance. We need to figure out, is it plus or minus? So let's go through our dot convention. We look at I2. I2 is entering the dot. That means there will be a positive sign at the dot of L1. So we're going to put positive here, and that means there's a negative at the undotted side. Now, I1 goes from what? Negative to positive in our case now. It's not positive to negative, not like it's self-inductance, but I1 will go through the negative negative side, negative polarity of the mutual inductance caused by I2. Well, that proves that it's negative. That's negative. Okay, so what this is equal to what? J omega L times I1 minus J omega M times I2. This is our total voltage drop across L1. Okay, let's try L2 now. Total voltage drop across L2. Well, let's write the equation down. VL2, it's self-inductance, plus or minus, I should put plus or minus here, the voltage, or the mutual voltage drop across L2. So what is its self-inductance? Well, what we have here is we can write out their constants, j omega L2 times what? The current through L2 is I2. Do we know if it's positive or negative? Well, yes, of course we do. It goes from the negative to the positive side. So we have a negative self-inductance. Then we have to worry about, is it plus or minus? And we know the values j omega m times what? The current through L1 is I1. Now let's look at the dot convention. I1 passes through the undotted side first and leaves the dotted side. So which side will have the positive? Well, the positive is going to be on the side that is undotted for L2 because it enters the undotted side of L1. L2 will have a positive mutual inductance at the undotted side and a negative electric potential at the dotted side. I hope y'all can understand that because that is something that is important. We can either choose undotted or dotted. If it enters the undotted side of L2 will be positive. In the previous example, because I1 here entered the dotted side, we have a positive at the dotted side of L2. Same thing here. Because, well, not same thing, but the opposite. Because I1 is entering the undotted side of L2 will be positive. So now, is it going to be positive or negative? Well, I2 is going to be negative. It's going to be a voltage gain. So we go from negative to positive of L2. So this one is also negative. So what will this be? This will be negative j omega. We can take it out j omega if we want. L2 I2 plus m times I1. And that will be our answer for the total voltage drop across L2. I hope y'all can see this, and I hope y'all understand how I'm getting these dot convention polarities. Just so you know, the current could be going in here, or again, we flipped these, which was really good because we understood that self-inductance does not affect the mutual inductance at all. It is where the current is flowing into these dots. So now, well, what if we have more than just two windings? What if you have three windings? What if you have four or five? It's going to be the same process, except now you have specific mutual inductances affecting one to the other inductor. So let's do this part. And these are just going to be like a load and source over here. It doesn't matter what they are. We're only looking at the windings. Okay. Well, let's think about this. Let's get arbitrary points. Arbitrary points to put dots. Also, why is this M1 and 2? This should just be M1, 2. Before we get into that, I'll try and read these out for y'all. So this will be the mutual inductance that 1 feels from 2. So it'll be like the flux that 1 feels from 2. Same thing up here. These fluxes, let's say this was 1 and this was 2. M12 would be the flux that 1 feels from 2. So that's one way you can think about that. Now, let's try and solve these. Let's pick random spots for these dots. And let's say we're going to be using the mesh current method. So current is going to be flowing in this direction, I1, and this direction, I2. Now, mesh current method is a very popular way of solving these windings And you'll see exactly why, because it makes this problem solving part very easy. So let's pick random spots. Let's say the L1 dot is here, L3 dot is here, and L2 dot is here. All right, there's going to be a lot of pluses and minuses floating around here, so just get ready here. Now, remember, we're going to assume all of them have a voltage drop for its self-inductances. The dot convention will tell us what the signs for the mutual inductances will be. So let's do mesh current method. Let's find the total voltage drop across L1. So we'll do equations for I1, really, for like this first loop. So instead of saying I1, we'll just say first loop. Equations for first loop. So let's say there's no voltage on the left side, so let's just say equal to 0. 0 is equal to what? J omega L1. So remember, it's self-inductance times I1. Plus, well, we have to now worry about the mutual inductance of L1, that it feels from L2 and L3. So we're going to do is plus or minus. Okay, well, let's see. Let's do M1 on N2. So we'll say here, M12, the mutual inductance that 1 feels from 2. Well, what is it? It's J omega M12 times which current is passing through L2. Well, if we're doing the first loop, we have to do I1 minus I2. So that'll be the current passing through L2. Okay, now let's think, is it plus or is it minus? Well, let's look at the dot convention. I1 minus I2 through L2 is flowing down. Okay, so does it hit the dot or does it hit the undotted side? That means it hits the undotted side. That means we're going to put a plus at the undotted side of L1 and a minus at the dotted side of L1. Now, does I1 hit the plus or the minus first as it passes through L1? Well, it hits the positive side first. So we have a positive mutual inductance for M12. Okay, now we have to remember there's another winding. So we do plus or minus, again, J omega 1, 3. The mutual inductance that 1 feels from 3. Times, what's the current passing through L3? Well, it's just I2. Now, is it plus or minus? Okay, let's see. Let's look at L3. Does I2 hit the dot first or the undotted side? Well, it hits the dot. So that means there will be a positive at L1 on the dotted side and a negative at the undotted side. I hope y'all can pick up on this. The current through L3 hits the dot first. That means the dotted side of L1 needs to be positive, making the undotted side negative. Now, looking at L1, does I1 hit the negative or the positive first? Well, it hits the negative. So that means we have a negative mutual inductance from the third coil. So this is M1 of 3. So look, we've done L1 for the first loop. Again, this is very tedious. Doing these types of problems is very tedious until you get really good at seeing these dots. And even then, it's tedious. You have to write three parts for one voltage drop, really? But now let's look at L2 because it's part of the first loop. So let's think first. First, let's think about the self-inductance. Self-inductance is J omega L2 times what is the current through L2 on the first loop? Well, it's I1 minus I2. Okay, then we have to deal with the mutual inductances. Let's think about M12 first. So this is M12. So this is what J omega M12 times what is the current of the first inductor because we're doing M12. the second will feel from the first. Well, M12 is going to be the current that is going through L1 is I1. Okay, now is it positive or negative? I1 minus I2. Oh, well, actually, let's just look at I1 for the M. Okay, I1 is going to enter the undotted side of L1. That means you have a positive at the undotted side of L2. So you have a positive here and a negative here. Let me say this again. Because I1 is going through the undotted side of L1, there will be a positive at the undotted side of L2, which is right here. How do I know it's the undotted side? Well, the dotted side is at the bottom, so the undotted side will be at the top. And now, with I1 and minus I2, I1 and I2, the current is going down, so that hits the positive side first of this mutual dot convention polarity. And now we can say that the mutual inductance has to be positive. Okay, then we have plus or minus. This one will be what? M13. Well, actually, M23. M23. Yeah. So what we have here is J omega M23 times I2. Because this is the mutual inductance that 2 feels from 3. So we have to find I2, the current passing through L3. Now again, let's see. So I2 passing through I3, L3, hits the dotted side first. So the dotted side will be positive from L2. So positive here and negative here. And now the current passing through L2, in our case for the first loop, will be I1 minus I2, or it is traveling downwards. That current will hit the negative terminal of our dot convention polarity. So that is going to be a minus. So look, we finished. We finished our first loop. These are the equations for our first loop with how many unknowns? The mutual inductances will be given. I1 and I2 are not given. So we're really just looking for the current through I1 and I2. So now we can do the equations for the second loop. The equations for the second loop are going to go just like the equations for the first loop, except whenever you do mesh current method, remember you have to do what? I2 minus I1 instead of the I1 minus I2. So let's get this over with. I'm going to do it a little quicker now because I assume y'all understand this new dot convention. So we're going to do L2 first. The self-inductance of L2 is J omega L2 times what? I2 minus I1. So now we have to do plus or minus the mutual inductance, and I'm going to write this here. Mutual inductance M12. So we have what? J omega M12 times, what is the current going through I1? Well, it's just I1, or L1, I'm sorry, goes through I1. Now let's look at the dot convention. Okay, current through I1 is going through the undotted side first, so you have a positive at the undotted side and a negative at the dotted side. And because we chose I2 minus I1 to be our current through L2, the current will be going from the bottom to the top, meaning we have a voltage gain. So we have a negative M12. I'll go through this first one a little slower now. But here, I1 goes through the undotted side of L1. So the positive will be at the what? Undotted side, and the negative will be at the dotted side. I2 minus I1 is chosen for the second loop, so we have a current going up. So it hits the negative first, causing a negative mutual inductance. Now we have plus or minus. This one is going to be what? M23. So J omega M23 times I2. Let's figure out, is it positive or negative? Okay, well, I, yeah. I2 is going to be going through L3 from the dotted side first. So there will be a positive at the dotted side of L2. That means because we've chosen our current to be I2 minus I1, so going in the upwards direction, we have it going from the positive terminal to the negative terminal of the dot convention, meaning we have a positive mutual inductance. And now, also, this should not be a minus or equal, this should be a plus. Then we have plus. Let's do the third inductor, L3. So plus, we can let this be J omega L3 times I2. This is our self-inductance. Now, plus or minus the mutual inductance, let's do M13 first. So this is M13. J omega M13 times the current going through M1, or I1, L1, sorry, is I1. Now, I1 is going through L1 at the undotted side first. So we have a positive at the undotted side and a negative at the dotted side. And now I2 is going through that negative sign, is going to go through the dot first, which is the negative side of L3. So we have a negative this one. Now we have a mutual inductance J omega M23 times I2 minus I1. This is going to be M23, the mutual inductance that 3 feels on 2. Now, how do we know if it's positive or negative? So the current that's going through L2 is I2 minus I1, which is from bottom to top. I2 minus I1 hits the dot first, so there will be a positive at the dot of L3 and a negative at the undotted side of L3. I2 goes through the positive first, so it's going to be a positive M23. And there we go. We have our two equations, and we have our two unknowns. We plug everything in and we solve. This is how you solve most, if not all, these winding questions that they have for y'all. Hopefully this made sense, and the dot convention, if y'all need me to go through any more problems, please let me know. But that's going to be pretty much all. This is kind of like an intro to these transformer problems that you're going to be seeing. And hopefully this made sense with the new dot convention. Instead of, active and passive convention, you're using both. You're using your active and passive sign relationship, and now you're using this new dot convention for transformers in the circuit models. And remember, these are ideal transformers. But that's all for today. Hopefully y'all understood this, and this helped any, because the homework is due, or I guess it was already due, but yeah, the questions were a little weird. But anyways, hopefully y'all enjoyed this. Thanks for joining.